Welcome to Mediocre Gaming, and today we're playing Destiny 2. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salutations. Today, become Legend. Let's get to it. The Legend Nightmare Hunts are available, and this provides a whole new dynamic for Nightmare Hunts. And what do I mean by that? Well, not only is it a higher difficulty level because it is recommended 950, so it is much higher and closer to the cap of 960, but there is also no matchmaking. So in this particular type of Nightmare Hunt, there's no matchmaking, and of course there are more modifiers, and it is a higher recommended power level. So the enemies are going to be more difficult to damage. There's going to be more modifiers like match game. There's going to be more champions, generally two different types, either barrier and overload or barrier and unstoppable. And you normally have one or two modifiers that will help you, but will also help the enemies as well. Ones that have like incoming, outgoing, all arc damage or all void damage or all solar damage is increased, air superiority where any enemy or you in the air does more damage, etc. Everything else, all the other modifiers are going to be detrimental, because if you have champions, then of course you'll need anti-barrier rounds, overload grenades, unstoppable melee or unstoppable rounds, what have you, in order to combat those specific modifiers. Additionally, when you have match game, you're going to want to have different elements. If you already know going into it what types of shields you're going to encounter, then you can go ahead and plan accordingly. So if you are going into a Nightmare Hunt where all solar damage is increased, then I would recommend going with a heavy that has solar damage, and then have a energy weapon that will combat the majority of the shields, especially if there is match game involved. And then your subclass can reflect a third one, or it can be solar. It just depends on what type of loadout your fire team has in addition to yourself. So if you have two other friends that you're going to do this with, and you're all around 950, so it should be relatively even match. If you're running solar in your energy slot, maybe someone else is running void in their energy slot, and someone else is running arc in their energy slot. Now, at the end of each hunt, and after you damage the nightmare to a certain extent, they start to summon enemies that have a shield. Now, these shields are more resilient than normal shields unless you have a specific mod that will deal with it. There is a mod that you do greater damage to these shields. And how do you get that mod? You play Nightmare Hunts in order to get them. So there are mods that the first mod that you get is one that comes with the Dreambane armor, and of course it unlocks for any armor that have that extra slot, the Season of Undying slot. And that is the Dreambane mod, which gives you extra resistance. Then you also have mods that your super does more damage to nightmares. And then you have a mod that your grenade and melees do more damage to nightmares. And there's a mod that you do more damage to the enemies that nightmares summon that have a shield. Now, these shields are always solar, so you know that you're going to need solar going into all of these Nightmare Hunts. Now, in addition to that, if you have harpies, you know those harpies are going to have an arc shield, so you're going to need arc weapons or some sort of arc damage in order to deal with it. If you have minotaurs, you know minotaurs are going to have void shields, so you're going to need void damage to take those shields out, especially if you have match game. So depending on what shields you're going to encounter will determine what weapons you have. Additionally, the champions that you're going to run into will determine what mods that you're going to have and what weapon or weapons that you're going to use. Going to use a hand cannon or a bow or a submachine gun or auto rifle, something that has anti-barrier rounds or overload rounds, something to counteract those champions, because without that, those champions do a heck of a lot of DPS, and you need to interrupt them somehow, because you don't want to rely on a super, your super, or a super from your fire team in order to deal with that. Now, when you're going into these Nightmare Hunts, you are not respawn restricted until you meet that nightmare. So whether you are going in with a group or trying to do it by yourself, know that you're able to go through without having to worry about going down. Now there is a 30-second timer if you do go down before you can respawn yourself, and of course your teammates can help you respawn immediately after you go down if they're in a position to do so. But once you get to that nightmare, it is respawn restricted and you will not be able to respawn. If you're by yourself and you go down, that's it. If every member of your fire team goes down, then you'll have to start from the start of the nightmare hunt. Not at the beginning, but once you get to the nightmare. So you do have to plan accordingly. You do have to use some strategy, and all of these arenas are relatively small once you hit the nightmare, and there is limited cover. Additionally, you have enemies that are going to be going around, and the nightmares float around the map in that small arena, which makes it difficult to stay in one spot. You can go into cover for a short amount of time, but then you're going to have to move again to get to another place where it is safe for a short amount of time. So get into cover, get back your health, get back your shields, and then get out, do some damage, you take some damage, then you find another spot that has cover, and just rinse and repeat. While the nightmares are immune, you need to take out those little nightmares and pick up the unstable essence. This of course will increase your damage to nightmares, both the boss plus also the small guys, but only for 15 seconds, so you have a short window to do increased damage. So once you get both of them down, the small nightmares, the boss will of course be in the damage phase. Once a certain amount of time or damage goes by, then they will become immune again, and you just rinse and repeat. Now there is a change. Once you do enough damage, they start summoning those shielded enemies, and you have to take out those shielded enemies, and of course they're more resilient to damage than normal shields, which is where that mod comes in. Now if you do have a mod that does more damage with grenades or melees to the boss, then try to save those abilities for the boss. Additionally, if you have supers that do more damage to the boss, try to save those for the boss as well. Now the big question is, why do this higher difficulty level of nightmare hunts? Why would I do that where there's no matchmaking and there's more modifiers and it's more difficult versus one of the first two levels which has matchmaking and isn't as difficult? The power level requirement isn't as high, there aren't as many modifiers, the champions aren't as difficult to take out, etc. At the end of the nightmare hunt, as you go up in the levels, as it gets more difficult, you have not only a deeper loot pool to draw from, but the odds of getting something from that loot pool is increased. And what am I talking about? You have the essence weapons, the ones that you get from the lectern. Those are available as a drop from the nightmare hunts. You say, well, I've never seen one. Well, if you've only done the adept or the hero, I'm not surprised. You're going to want to do the legend and the master in order to get that. Additionally, mods, all these nightmare mods are more likely to drop, and you can get the better mods by doing the harder missions. So doing nightmare hunts on legend, you're more likely to get those higher mods. So not only the base level, but there's also enhanced and supreme level mods as well. So you want to do those harder ones to get those, which will make it easier to do nightmare hunts in the future. Well, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check us out on social media, and thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'll see you next time.
Guardian down. Guardian down. Eris. We've put the nightmare of Zydron to rest.
The pyramid's distractions prove weak, time and again. The next time